Okay, last week we talked about how to write linear equations when we are given the slope and an intercept or a graph or a point in the slope. Today we're going to learn how to write linear equations if we're given 2 points. So our steps are going to look a little different. And if you look at your first example here, there are steps right next to it. The first step is to find your slope because we don't have that this time. And then the second step is to plug it in. Now notice in my directions, which is really important, it says to write the equation in point-slope form. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So think back about 2 weeks. Remember we labeled our points with x's and y's, and then the first point got 1's and the second point got 2's. So my slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Notice I always have a minus sign in the middle, even if there's a negative, and then I change it. So minus and negative is the same as plus and positive, so negative 2 plus 3 is 1. And negative 2 minus 0 is negative 2. So my slope is negative 1/2. Now, once I have that, remember point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We already have those labeled, so we're going to go ahead and plug them in there. So we're going to do y minus y1, which means it actually changes the sign, equals our slope, we just found is 1/2, times x minus x1, which is 0. Okay, so once I have this, notice my slope came in here, my x1 went there, and my y1 went there. Always change your signs for your x1, y1 when you plug them in. Your slope stays the same. Okay? Now, I put point slope form up there. If you need your slope formula, just as a refresher, looks like this. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this is slope, and then this is point slope. Okay, so let's do one more. We're going to go ahead and label those. So I'm going to do x, y, x, y. And 1's for the first point, 2's for the second point. So if I find my slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Change that to plus positive, so I get negative 2 over negative 2, which simplifies to give me 1. So there's my slope. And I have my x1 and y1, so I'm going to plug those in. So y minus y1 means I change my sign, equals m times x minus x1, which is 0, and we're done. Okay. Now the next one is similar. The only difference is now we need to put our answer in slope-intercept form. So we're going to do y equals mx plus b for our final answer. So there's a couple extra steps. Slope formula is still the same, so I'm going to write that right there. So finding the slope using the slope formula is right there. Everything else is going to be very similar. Okay, so we're going to do our points. So I have x, y, 1's for the first one. Let's get rid of that. Hang on. 1's for the first one and 2's for the second one. So I'm going to plug that in. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Make that plus a positive. So negative 4 plus 5 is 1. 3 minus 0 is 3, so there's our slope. Then we have our values to plug in. So y minus y1 means we change our signs. Equals m times x minus x1, which is 0. And then on the last one we stopped here because this is point slope form. The directions here say to change this or put this in slope-intercept form. So we have two more steps to do. We're going to distribute. So I have y plus 5 equals 1/3 times x, and then 1/3 times 0 is 0, plus 0 minus 0. And then my last step is to solve for y, so I'm going to do minus 5 on both sides. So 0 minus 5 is negative 5. Okay, let's do one more. We'll start by finding the slope. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And 3 minus 2 is 1. Negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. So when I simplify, I get negative 1 there. We're going to plug that in. So we have y minus y1, so it changes the sign, equals m, which is negative 1, times x minus negative 4, again changes the sign. And then because the directions say slope-intercept form, we're going to distribute. Okay, so negative 1 times x is negative 1x, negative 1 times 4 is negative 4, and then add 2 to both sides. So when I add 2, I get negative 1x, and then negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Final answer there. Okay, so very similar to what we did last week. The only difference is you need to use the slope formula first before you do anything else. There are a couple of guided practice problems here. Notice it says point slope form, slope intercept form. Have those checked, and then you will get your homework. We're going to do a lot more practice with these in the next few days. So make sure you take advantage of your time now and get help if you're struggling. Have a great day.